right, for this talk, I'm going to be talking about people, leaders in the world. What are they doing? What's happening for them over the next 6 months to, and a little bit into the following time periods. So let's start with 45. Um, Here we have his Pluto is at 7 degrees Leo, just like everybody who is born anywhere during World War II will have their Pluto somewhere in Leo, and we'll be having a Pluto opposition over the next several years. This is a natural time for people to, natural end to lifespans for people born during World War II, and plenty of them will live a lot longer. But it's an outer planet to an outer planet, so it's not so significant personally. He has Mercury at 8 degrees Cancer. That means that the eclipse will aspect his Mercury, his thinking, which may be in decline. He was born at a total lunar eclipse. We're going to look at some of these people in positions of power because when we're born in an eclipse, our life isn't exactly ours. It's more driven by fate, circumstances, projections. So he really does pick up the energy in a room, and he's really like a channeler in a way, like it's not even him doing the talking. So he's more likely to be taking on the voice, even though it's coming through his own charisma, I want to say, or his own magnetism, or the way it comes through is connecting to the vibrations in the crowd, in the audience, which is part of why crowd size is so important to him, because that's his experience of himself is through the projections. And then who's really in power? I don't think that he's completely running the show. The thing that he has at around 9 degrees Leo is his sun and Neptune midpoint. Now, the midpoints with the sun are how, wherever that point is, that's how our ego, our identity absorbs that planet. Neptune's a planet of deception. It's a planet of illusion. So the sun Neptune midpoint is where we project our false selves or an illusion, or where we experience an illusion. It can also be a spiritual point. His Pluto hitting the Sun Neptune midpoint is where his power is coming from, which again is the illusion, the projection, the illusion of power. He also has his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo, where the star Regulus is. And the star Regulus is a notable star of leadership. Now, there's not a lot aspecting that right now. So, or if anything, really. So he's not getting much benefit this time around by any aspects to his ascendant, which would be helpful. He's got Mars here, which is that bravado, that just say whatever the flip he wants to say, the aggressiveness, the misogyny, the violence that's in his expression. That has to do with this Mars ascendant. It's not, there's nothing coming that I think is particularly significant that enhances this. So I think more than last time, he's really working with the powers that be that are kind of behind the man behind the people. So actually, I think it's a woman this time behind the throne. So I think Susie Wiles is a powerful woman. I don't think she stays there, but she's his chief of staff right now. And all right, Xi Jinping. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. Moon at 5 degrees Leo. It's connected to the moon and the emotions of the country. I think he's got his finger on the pulse, but this is powerful. The Mars retrograde is going back and forth over his moon and his south node. So there's some kind of unrest and some kind of difficulties that he's dealing with. He's probably clamping down in a way, but the negotiations that are happening behind the scenes with India, with Russia, I think these are changing the whole way that the world is operating. And I think this Mars retrograde is emboldening him to do that work. As Mars is at 0 degrees Cancer, the Aries point, so Saturn and Neptune will be squaring that. I've already talked about that Mars Neptune relationship as being about the sixth ray. I think that he will have to deal with issues around religion and devotional aspects in China, and the work of how people express themselves, feel, believe. I think he will encounter some obstacles and challenges over the next couple of years. But I would say that this chart does not lead me to think that he will be taken out. But this moon, and again, we don't have a birth time for him. The thing with this chart is I think there's a possibility we don't even have the right day for him. There's something mysterious about him. However, Venus is at what I call the vision point. He's got some long-term vision, if this is truly his birth date. He has a long-term vision for the possibilities of the country. And I think that that long-term visioning that happens, any planets at around 8, 9 degrees Taurus are particularly potent for visioning. I think that is what's going to save him and may even be beneficial for China in the long run. All right, Netanyahu, he's got a big voice. Another person born very close to an eclipse, not as exact as the lunar eclipse that Trump was born under. He was born under a solar eclipse. They both have moon south node conjunctions, which means they didn't really get the nurturing. Neither of them got the nurturing that they needed. There was abandonment. So again, projection of power, and especially in Libra, where this is the sign where we want to please other people. It's often considered the peacemaking sign, but when you have so many planets in a sign, then that sign, it can exhibit the most extreme aspects of it. And Libra has to get out of balance to get in balance. There's a sense of a seesaw energy with Libra. So oftentimes when you have planets at Libra, that planet, whatever it's doing with its sun or the moon, has to express the extremes. It has to go back and forth between its opposition point. So the Aries, so 19 degrees Aries for Netanyahu, he has to be impulsive. He has to show bravado. He has to be, the Aries energy has to express itself when you have so much Libra, which is that spark that I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want. It's that energy. And when it's with all that Libra, again, like thriving, just like Trump, thriving on the crowd, thriving on the voice, thriving on the what everybody else thinks about him. He cares about that. Let's see, what else does he have going on? So his chart is noticeably absent of anything at 9 degrees Leo Aquarius. I don't think he stays in power. I think we'll see him out maybe even in the spring. I think that the eclipses are one of the eclipses is right on his Mercury. I think given Israel's chart and that Uranus transit to it, that this may be a regime change and a big change in Israel's leadership. So his wife is the one who has the planets in Leo, but mostly this big stellium in Scorpio, which is at the point I call the justice point. It's not really where we get justice, but it's the cry for justice. It's the willing to turn things over to get change. It's the willingness to say the emperor has no clothes, but it's also subversive power, power behind the scenes. It's secret organization. So I think she's got a lot of power and influence, much more than is obvious. Like I bet some of you didn't even know about her. I didn't until I started looking and started going, what's going on with Netanyahu's chart? Because I'm not seeing the power. So then I often look at the partner. The composite chart is very powerful as well. I don't have that here, but this is a lot of power and a lot of willingness to do some underhanded backroom negotiations. She could turn, she could change. This Mars retrograde is squaring a lot of this for her. We have an accurate birth time for her, 5:15 a.m. That means we can use the ascendant. So the Mars retrograde is squaring her ascendant, who she appears. She may get outed in this time period. The Uranus transit is on her Mars. Her Mars is aligned with the sun of Israel. I don't really know much about her personally, but this is a powerful woman not to be messed with. And as these transits come along next year, we might see a massive change for her. In other words, this supports them both being out of power. All right, Putin. Let's see. So he's got this Libra energy down here, Sun, Saturn, Neptune. Now, if we go back to Netanyahu's chart, sorry, he has Sun, Moon, South Node, Neptune. His Saturn is here in Virgo, not really helping much. Square Venus. It's not a strong Saturn. So the control, the ability to be authoritarian, the ability to stay in control isn't there. We can see that Putin's Sun, Saturn, this is him being in charge, being in control, being the authority. He's probably somewhat controlling Netanyahu. We can see that their suns are close and that Putin's sun, Saturn, which is very different than an eclipse. He's someone not born during eclipse. This isn't about projection. He really has true power because his sun moon midpoint is exactly at 9 degrees, 10 degrees Leo. So he is somebody who is calling the shots. He looks like he's calling the shots. He is. Now, Uranus is going to go back and forth over his moon, which I think he's going to be out too with that Uranus transit next year. But it may be more, it could be the fall of 2025 or the fall of 2026, that uprising in Russia. But this is going to be a hard person to take out because he has so much inner authority and so much personal power that he probably has lots of alliances and lots of ties and support. But that ego will be his downfall. And we can see that the Aries point, he doesn't have a lot there. He has Chiron, so he might be a little wounded by the transits in the spring. But again, I think he stays in power through that. The Neptune Saturn transits are not very strong for his chart. So eventually Saturn will oppose itself over here, but that, I mean, he's had that plenty of times since he's had Saturn aspects to his Sun and Saturn already while he's been in office, and he's done just fine. So I think Pluto hitting his Sun Moon midpoint, that's more likely 2027, 2028. But I think other things will take him out. I think that Uranus on his moon is going to be particularly tricky. We do have a birth time for him. All right, so Erdogan. And we have a birth time for Erdogan. North Node, when it's on the ascendant, by the way, is just a tremendous amount of ambition and drive. Moon Mars, this is the wanting to use military, wanting to use subversive tactics, wanting to use violence. But all this Pisces here is not going to be heavily supported in this growing time. Is, let's see, he's got Saturn up here on the midheaven, which is close to where Sara Netanyahu's stellium is, her sun and Venus. So there may be some kind of agreement between them. I don't look at his chart and think this is a particularly strong chart either. Even though He claims he's the dictator to beat all dictators. I I think it's subterfuge. This Saturn can have him appear that way. Hitler had his Saturn on his midheaven, particularly for funding underground or grassroots organizations or subversive organizations or even terrorist organizations. That Saturn up here can support that. But I wonder how long he will be in power. However, his wife has a more powerful chart. She's got her Mercury at that Aquarius point, moon close to there, sun, her ascendant, descendant is at the Aries point. So I think it may be that both, I think it's pronounced Emine, um, her chart and Sara Netanyahu's chart, I'll be interested to see if if they become more visible, particularly as Uranus starts hitting that Algol point of the feminine, to see if, their influence, if things come out about them that are connected to the taking down of their husbands. All right, now we'll look at some religious leaders, just Dalai Lama and the Pope. Uh, so the Dalai Lama has lived through his Pluto opposition. He's lived through lots of difficult transits. There's nothing that I'm seeing important at the Aries point. There's nothing that I'm seeing important in terms of the um, 9 degrees Leo, except for the sun moon. So the sun moon midpoint in his chart is also at 10 degrees of Leo. So another person, just like Putin, they have their sun moon midpoints at, that 9, 10 degrees Leo spot. They're powerful. They're personally empowered. I mean, this person has been through a tremendous amount in his life. If he says he's sticking around for another 10 years, so don't bother even trying to figure it out, he's probably right because he's got that power instilled in him. Now, at the same time, with Putin, I was looking at Uranus conjunct his moon as a difficult transit, but Pluto will be opposing that midpoint and come 2028, 2027, 2028, when Pluto's more exact there, and we'll have eclipses there 2027. Those transits will be difficult for him, and that may be the change time for him. All right, Pope Francis has Venus and the moon, the Aquarius, which is more collaborative, more interested in the environment, but that supports him having some personal power here, and being a person of change. Now, he was also born fairly close to an eclipse. I would say the eclipse happened about 3 or 4 days before he was born. It would have been a total solar eclipse at the galactic center. So there's some really strong visionary qualities to him. Again, I think it's still about a lot about projection. I mean, that sun north node, same place that Trump has his sun and north node. So I think there's ambition in him. He's overcome a lot. He's been an activist and also he's got a checkered past. We all saw the movie, right? But regardless of that, this Venus, which is a lot more about love and connection to people, and this moon, again, I think we'll have to wait till Pluto crosses these points to see a new pope. The conversation is so much about it. Let's see, we've got a fairly accurate birth time for him, so we could say 9 degrees Cancer and Capricorn will be aspected by the eclipses, but squares from eclipses are not that strong. Really, transits from eclipses really kind of need to be opposition or conjunction. Yeah, I don't think I can be more helpful around his chart for now. Just checking out his chart to see, I mean, he was born in a full moon. I don't even know why I'm looking at it. What's the point? Let's just move on. Okay, so this is the end of looking at people in the world's charts. In the next recording, I will look at Trump's new administration. I know we're all kind of curious about that. Okay, have a lovely day. Thank you.